Hey, it's Matt with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and it is Wednesday. It's March 31st. This will be our chart lesson for the day, and we wrapped up another month. Believe it or not, this first quarter is pretty much over with. Tomorrow we'll start a new month in April. We just started the June contract a couple of weeks ago, so I don't know where the time's going, but it just keeps flying by. But anyway, today we're looking at a spiking channel. We did push above that 39.70 level, although we didn't stay there very long. As you can see, we've come back and we closed right around in that area, same area. So you would expect prices to pull back and test that, even if they're going higher. So no surprise. It was a little surprise we pulled all the way back after such a strong trend day. I mean, this is a spiking channel up, and this is not a super strong trend as far as the blue channel goes, but we did get a nice spike up here on this last move, and it was pretty strong. This is a really strong trend up, even though it doesn't look like it. And I started out with the yellow channel and the green range because we are in a range here, but we traded up into this, so the bias is still going to be to the upside. So you want to be real careful about going short in here. Um, Actually, after we had the break and a new high, if you'd had a decent short setup, you might take it here. But I don't see anything I like. That's too congestive to trade out of that, and you just really don't get another chance to enter. There is a lower high right here, but I just don't think you want to enter right there short yet. Right back into the support. So there's the support there was obvious. The highs were not necessarily obvious, but you can see that support that's all the way across there. So going short right into that, because this is what happens. It bounces like it does there. It may be a little hard to see, but we'll see it when I back out here in a minute. Not a lot of trades today. Um, a lot of sideways action here. A lot of meandered around until we had this really strong move. Once we kind of broke higher here, we cleaned out a lot of those stops and we hung around there a little bit, and then finally prices were able to take off. So there's just strong resistance at this 39.7 level. And even though we got higher, we didn't stay up there very long, and then 39.80 was really kind of the line in the sand, and we never could get above that. So eventually prices went lower. Based on what that chart I showed you yesterday, the daily chart, there's still a good chance we're going higher. We'll just have to see what happens. You should have measured this first leg up this morning. Of course, measure this move up, and then from here, and that's that leg. And we didn't make that, so a lot of times when you don't make those targets, once you turn down, you get a pretty good sell-off in the other direction, and we had that. And there's actually a couple of legs down here. I don't have those on here. There's your first leg down, and then there's your little two-legged correction, and then there's your second leg. So that would have been your target. We actually bounced there and went a little bit lower before continuing on lower, but that would have been a nice target working down on this before you had this correction. So we didn't do the legs going up. This was one leg I measured from here to here, and then from here on up, and you see that right there. And we really didn't. You see we turned down off of the tick, but we continued on once we got through there. So the other way, again, was to measure this first leg, and then that's this leg right here. We didn't make that one, as I discussed earlier. So most of these measured legs today just didn't turn out very close. So just one of those days. But really, this is trending up. This is again, we spiked up and then went to a channel. And this is a really strong spike up right here. So it's a shame you don't get a better opportunity to enter it, but there's really just not one. There's a second entry here, and on a strong trend, you might take that trade, but the fact that you had this little inside bar that's a doji, by the time it closed, the prices had not broke higher yet, so then you got three bars stacked up there, and at least one of them's a doji, or has no body or a very small body. It's always suspect, so I don't like that entry. If you waited a few minutes later, you got another second entry right here. I marked it green, but it's real close. We'll talk about it. Let me back on out. We'll get to going with the trades here, but you can clearly see the spike in channel. And this blue channel was a little it was really hard to know. Actually, I also drew earlier in the day, I drew this channel off the first two swings like we teach you to do it. And the problem is you just never really it never really came into play. Now it did play off this midline a couple of times. And it did play off of it well after 2 o'clock here, but it doesn't really help you. It just kind of gets in the way. So you really had to play the other channels here. Oops, I moved the wrong one. I want to put this one back on. Oh, well. Big mistake there. Let's get our other channel back on here. Where did I have that from? I think I actually brought it from right here. Yep, like so. And you can see prices playing off both sides of the line. You can see the trend line. So this was the better play. Put this back on here in blue. But that's what I was looking at. So I'm going to back on out here or zoom on in, and where we can see the bars a little better, and we'll get through these trades, wrap this day up. But when we came in, there's not a whole lot of overnight action here really up into 7 o'clock. It's just mostly sideways stuff. But we do have a little spiking channel up here. And you can clearly see a second entry long right here. That bar is real close to not qualifying, but I think it closes close enough to the high, new high, first entry, and when it broke above that bar, second entry. And it mainly because it's right off that key entry point that's been bounced off of multiple times. So I like that long. You probably get a runner there, and if you catch that one trade, that may be the only one you need this morning, today rather, not just this morning, but maybe the only one you need for the day. So that turned out to be a nice trade. It comes back to the key entry point again, but no entry. And then it comes back again. Again, there's no entry here. You really should wait on the second entry, which my mouse is just not acting right here. It goes back, and you get a second entry when it breaks lower here. This is really your signal bar. So then this is an inside bar, and it's a very neutral one bar trading range, so there's just not a good entry there. It probably would have worked, but if you'd have gone long above this one, I don't think you have enough room to scalp out there. And that's why we use these filters, because it's telling you something there. There's no rejection there off that EMA. Prices are just hanging around. And you can see we came back again and we went lower, and you get another second entry. There's a new swing high here. Basically, it's a double top, so you can still count it. First entry, second entry. You can clearly see there's a couple of swings down, but it's a lot of sideways action, and it's a chance to enter off the lows on a double test as well. See that low, test it once, test it twice. There's plenty of room to get out, even if this is the high of the range across here, which it's not. It turns out to be the midline. So you could argue for this one to be blue. It's real close. So it just depends on how you felt about it, but you could argue for that to be blue. I marked it green. I think you're better to wait on the higher low, which comes here. You still got room to get out. And there's actually a reversal here, but that's too much sideways to be looking for a second entry or a reversal anymore. So you can't really take that trade because there's a reversal pattern there. So if you didn't enter here, there's not really any entry there. Off we go. We run up to the highs. We run back down. Of course, you wouldn't have known where the highs were necessarily unless you drew your line across here and just kind of looked for a measured move up. At this point, I was really looking at the yellow channel, and I wasn't really looking at this being a range until we bounced down here again. Really, when we came off that high and then bounced down here again, then you got to assume, hey, there's a range going on here. This does leave you with a break and a couple of legs up to a new high, but there's just too many bars stacked up there. It is a little ways from the EMA. If you took this trade, there's 3 attempts to go higher there. You could argue that that's a little double test of the top of the range. So if you took that trade, I wouldn't have too much problem with it, but I think you're better off to wait. The trend has been up, the bias is up. So, even if their trend is going to reverse, it's probably going to take a little bit, and trying to enter too quickly is never a good idea. But we run down, you get a close outside, a new low, all in one bar. The only problem is it's just the first entry. This is a double top. This is just, you can clearly see there's a hidden second entry in there though. So if you took this trade, again, I've got no problem with it. It's real close to being blue. I still marked it green as aggressive, but it is right off the key entry point. And you can still see at this point the yellow channel is in play. It's when it bounced, it turned down here again, and then really bounced off the lows again down here that I saw it as a range. I was still playing this yellow channel, and that's another reason I like that one. If you're looking at the yellow channel, which you can clearly see that it's in play up through there, then you could almost argue for that to be blue, or you could argue for that to be blue, not almost. So, but we don't go very far, and we find resistance there, and then we bounce here again. Again, I don't see any, the signal bar really doesn't qualify there, and there's a nice big bullish bar here, but you're right back at the highs of this range, and at this point I'm looking at this, hey, this could be a range. But in the end, it just turns out to be a close outside and a couple of legs up to a new high, and then it reverses. So, but you can't really argue against that range. So if you saw it either way, you could play it either way. It really doesn't change much, except maybe this trade right here. It doesn't change a whole lot. If you're playing the range instead of the yellow channel, then you probably don't take this entry right here. So, but other than that, I don't think it matters one way or the other which way you play this. And again, no shorts here, and then it bounces, and I don't see a long there I like. We run up, and then you're working down first entry, second entry, and it looks like it's going to be a trap, and it fails. So this is just a higher low on a double bottom. And notice we had the overshoot here. Is that really an overshoot? I don't know. It's hard to say. You could move that up there, and it still fits. So this is probably correct, but it could still be an overshoot. It still led you to know that there was going to be a break here, which there was. But when you get that higher low, I like going long there. There's not really enough, normally I'd tell you put your trend line on here, and you could, but it doesn't really fit well. I mean, you see that it's really more sideways and a little failed break lower. So I didn't play it as a little trend down. I just played it as a little sideways with a dropout. Doesn't really change anything because you're playing this channel. And so this is just a higher low following a second entry. And notice that you get a break and a couple of legs up, and then it's correcting again. And at this point, this looks like an overshoot of your yellow channel. And we're just working down. There is a reversal in here, right here. But again, it's on the wrong side of the EMA. We did have a break in a new high, but this still looks like it. You could almost say, hey, there's a little bit of a range across here. Maybe like that. And that's a failed break lower, a little failed break higher. So I just don't see an entry right here. It's too much sideways action right there to go short. And then next thing you know, we're bouncing off the lower side again. There's no failed second entry long here I like, because there's your failed second entry long. Notice the new high, first entry, second entry, and that's just congestion. You got 3 bars stacked up, and one of them has hardly any body. The next one, the same thing. So that's congestion. Just stay out of it, especially right at the EMA there. And finally we bounce. And I like this one simply because it does bounce off the key entry point, the trend line again. And you can clearly see a couple of legs up, and then it's like a hidden second entry. And so if you treated that like a hidden second entry, you could assume this may be a failed second entry short. And it does break lower first and turn and go up. I like going long on the engulfing bar here, but you could wait on this one. And either way, you can see it's a very bullish move. Just put your buy stop there. Either way, you still got room back to these highs. So, and it just takes on off this time. And you got a new trend channel going here, but again, you don't get a really good chance to enter on it. It's one of those strong trends, so any bullish bar that comes back to the key entry point, especially until you get to that measured move right there. Again, that was this leg, then the correction. So this was our target right here. So as long as you got room, you could have entered. You possibly might have entered on this bar, or this bar. I mean, you could argue for all three of them because they're right off the key entry point, and you can see there's no corrections that are even there's not much room to correct. So again, that's a strong move up, and you're probably not going to get any second entries. So again, I didn't mark any of them because that's a little more advanced and a little more aggressive, and most traders are probably better off just to wait until you get something that's easier to see and that makes more sense. So, but you can see you do get a close outside and a couple of legs up. Then you get a lower high right here, and then a reversal. And you might take that lower high. The only problem is it's a long ways away from the EMA, but the only problem is we just came off the EMA. So you could get another leg up and then turn down and have a little two-legged correction in there. So I felt it was better to wait. Then finally you push through and you come back, and that's right off the key entry point. I treated that like a failure, a failed second entry short. You can clearly see you went higher once, twice, but that's where it broke lower right here where the bearish bar is. So I'm okay with taking that one because that's probably going to trap your longs, and you can see how quickly that pushes down, and you actually push way on down here. And that overshoot is telling you, hey, we may get a break probably here, and sure enough, you get a break. And you may get a reversal. That's the problem with an overshoot is you got to be careful going short. You need a really good setup, and there's just no good setup here. And again, we're working sideways in another range, and this takes us right into 2 o'clock. I did see one other long trade I liked here because notice you're working on down this channel. You get an overshoot first, and then you get that two-legged correction there. So you may get a measured move, but when you come down here and you make a low, and then you test it once and then twice, that's a double test or a triple test, however you like to call it. I call it a double test because it's a double test of a level that's already there, which is this support. Notice that we made a low there, then we made that low again, then we test it once, we test it twice, and that's a nice bullish bar. It actually, I don't know if I think this went lower first and then turned up, but I wouldn't swear to that. I'm not sure exactly how this played out, but either way, you could wait for that to close and go long one tick above it. It works either way. You get a lot more room out of it down here, but even if you waited for that bar right there, it still has plenty of room to get out, and that takes us into 2 o'clock. So just not a lot of trades today. There's a couple of pretty good trades, and it was a relatively straightforward day because you mostly should have just been looking for longs. And as you can see, there's not a lot of them. So this is one of those days where you have to just kind of sit patiently. Or, again, when you see these really strong trends like this and like this, if you get a good signal bar off the key entry point, you just have to take it. But you got to recognize what's going on first. So anyway, that's what I saw today, and looks like we might get done with this one within 20 minutes if I don't run my mouth too much longer here. So I guess we'll be back again to do it tomorrow and wrap up our week. Tomorrow's Thursday, no chart lessons on Fridays, so we will wrap up our week tomorrow. We'll wrap up our month today, so we'll start a new day, new month tomorrow. But I hope you had a good trading day. I'm going to finish up for today. We'll be back again tomorrow. This is Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and we'll see you next time.